So on page 100, we have the next section, el reflexivo por los verbos de movimiento. So the reflexive verbs for movement. So certain verbs of movement are used in the reflexive form. Now remember, we talked last week about how the reflexive verbs often translate into a verb in English, but it's not the literal translation. Because, well, and also that the reflexive verb that's one verb is like dormirse is different than dormir. So the fact that it becomes reflexive changes the verb. It's a slightly different but related verb when you translate it in English. And that we'll see that again today. So for example, the first verb here says darse prisa. Prisa is a noun and darse is the verb, right? So dar is the infinitive, but darse is the reflexive infinitive because it adds se on the end of the infinitive. Does anybody remember what dar means? The verb infinitive dar. What does that mean? To what? Close. Ir, the next one, irse, right? Irse comes from ir. Oh, to O, sorry. No, that would be deber. So good guess. Deber is to O, or to atu. Good guess though. Yeah. To give. Good. So dar means to give. So darse literally means to give myself, or to give one's self, whoever they are that's doing the action. So to give oneself, and then prisa. Based on the parentheses there, if darse prisa, the whole thing together, means to hurry, and darse means to give, what do you think prisa might mean? Any guess? It comes from the same Italian word that the name of the race Grand Prix comes from, prisa, and prix, P-R-I-X, come from the same Latin root. So Grand Prix, you know what that is? Everyone hear of it? It's a race, exactly. So what does prisa mean? Or what, take a guess. What might it mean? Your ability to guess what things mean is so important, because if you go to a Spanish country, you're not going to know everything from 2 years of Spanish. And what you do learn these 2 years, you're likely going to forget. But if you can walk away with an ability to try to guess what things are, that's super helpful. So taking a guess, trying to piece different pieces of knowledge together, like Grand Prix, P-R-A-X is a race. I'm giving myself something. What might prisa mean?
Like hurry.
Yeah, hurry. Good, which is right there. Any other words? It does mean hurry. But hurry is an adverb or an adjective. What would be the noun of hurry? What would be the noun version of the verb or adverb hurry? A rush. To give oneself rush. So it sounds funny, but we even in English have a phrase that's similar, right? An older phrase, but when somebody says, he must give chase, right? So it's a similar construction, to give chase. Chase is a noun, and it's a way of saying that he's chasing someone, to give chase. So, to give oneself rush. The next one, irse. Ir was to go, which is what I thought you were saying, Taylor. So, irse means what? It's reflexive, so what might irse mean? So it's translated as to leave, But what I want you to understand is the reflexive nature of these verbs. If I say to leave, in English, that has nothing reflexive about it, right? But I want you to understand the reflexive nature of these verbs. So a more literal translation of irse, how would you describe irse? Knowing ir means to go, and it's reflexive, and in the end it means to leave. What does irse, what might irse mean, literally? Any guess?
To leave for.
Well, I mean, that's what it says there, right? But the reflexive nature, the doing it to yourself part of the verb, that reflexive nature of it. How would you describe it sounds very odd, right? Which is why we wouldn't give this meaning right now as the translation, but to go, to make yourself go, to go yourself, right? To make yourself go. That's the idea in Spanish of to leave. This is so important because the language, when you learn a language, it's the language is part of what helps people to think a certain way. A really clear example is that some languages call the colors different colors, and you understand that mixing colors together places shades of like blue and yellow really close to green, right? So the more you mix colors, they get closer and closer. Well, some cultures, because of their language, have a limited amount of colors that they call things. So that what you think is green, they're going to call yellow because their language forces them to call it a certain way. But when you translate, then it's odd because it's like, well, that's yellow, that's not green, right? So language has a way of forming the way you think about things in your culture. And this is an important aspect because in their culture, these are reflexive verbs. It's making themselves go. Whereas in English, it's just an action. It's more simple for these. And that's going to affect the way that they see things. So understanding the context for how a verb is being used and not simply the English translation is a huge part of learning another culture and not just learning another language. And that's what we're trying to do in Spanish class. My goal is not for you to simply walk away learning how to say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? Ah, muy bien, gracias. Adios. Like, that is very basic. I want you to grasp more language than just that. But I also want you to grasp more culture. You're not going to remember everything from Spanish class. I know I didn't remember everything from my Spanish class, and I'm still teaching Spanish, right? So the fact is, all of you are not going to teach Spanish, right? Not all of you are going to teach Spanish someday. And so you will likely not remember even more than I don't remember. And that's okay. That's natural. That's just the way school works. However, what I want you to walk away with is a really strong grasp and appreciation for different cultures, how they're different, why they're different, the fascination of them being different, and that you go out and begin to learn more about other cultures. It may not be Spanish. It may be, maybe your family's culture in the past, from your heritage, things like that. But really grasping that the culture is different and that difference appears in the language is really, really important. And that's fascinating to me. So I really hope that that's something that you can grasp too. Okay, let's focus a little bit more now on the actual grammar of the language. So, marcharse means to leave. What might marcharse mean? To march myself, right? March myself on out of here. Son las 11. What does son las 11 mean? They are what? 11. What number is 11? 11, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that means it's 11 o'clock. Voy a marcharme. I'm going to march myself out. I'm going to leave. And quedarse means to stay. Me quedo. Reunirse. And then notice the preposition con. So to meet reunirse means to meet, but you should use it with the word con, to meet with. And that one is naturally reflexive because whenever you meet with someone as a group, it's reflexive, right? It may not be reflexive back on yourself per se, although you do use it that way. He meets with himself with his friends, is what it literally, like Marcos se reúne con sus amigos. He himself meets with his friends. But still, the idea is that as a group, this is reflexive. We're meeting each other, and that's a reflexive type of nature. Okay, your homework is activity 4 and 5, but you should also look at the list of verbs on page 101, and it tells you some other information there that you should know. Number 1 are the prepositions that you should use with them. So acostumbrarse means to get used to, but notice even in English we have the verb, it says to get used to, and so in Spanish too. Acostumbrarse a, to get used to there. That's the word a. And then again, alegrarse, to get or to be or to become happy because of. So de is that of idea. So make sure you don't forget those prepositions. Another one, enojarse, to get angry at. Enojado means angry, or I'm sorry, enojado means anger as a noun, right? So if I want to say, I am angry, you would say estoy enojado, or enojada for a girl. Here it's a verb, to become or to get angry. Enojarse. Enojarse con. To get angry with someone. And even in English we say with. Ocuparse, to occupy oneself. Ocuparse de. And then por, preocuparse, por, to be worried. So that's the difference between I'm occupied with something and I'm preoccupied, as in my mind is distracted, right? And that's the idea where we get to be worried or to be concerned about something. Sentirse, to feel. So if you want to say you feel something like me siento triste. Me siento triste. I feel sad. Okay, so the other thing that we'll see in parentheses here is where it has that arrow, the E to IE. That's referring to a root changing verb. So, for example, divertirse, to have fun. Divertido means fun, right? Divertido is like fun, exciting fun. As a verb, it's an E to IE root changing verb. So can somebody tell me which letters exactly are the root in divertirse? Which letters in that verb are the root? Camille? Which letters are the root? Well, remember, every verb is in one of 3 categories: AR, ER, or IR. And then we also add the SE to notify that it's reflexive, but everything else is the root. So DIVERT. Divert is the root, and then irse is the end of the verb, right? Does everyone understand that? Trying to be able to find the root. That's important if you're going to be able to conjugate things, right? So divertirse, and divert is the root, and it's an E to IE root changing verb. So which letter is going to change? The E in the root, not the E at the end. Okay? It's only the E in the root of the verb that changes. So that means the DIVE changes to DIVIE. But which conjugations does the E to IE change happen? It's within the what? Well, yes, it is changing the root. But if you're looking at all 6 conjugations, right? First, second, third, singular, and plural. which of those 6 conjugations does the root change with? It was the boot, remember? Remember seeing the boot? E to IE change the root in the boot. So it was called a root boot verb, is what we called it. So if you have first, second, and third person singular and first, second, and third person plural, those 6 there, then it'll have a boot around the first, second, and third singular and the third person plural. Okay, so the far left ones and the bottom right one. There would be a big square boot all the way around those. Those are the only ones that this I to E changes in. And you should know that because when it comes to the quiz, I'm going to be asking you to conjugate these. Okay, so you need to be able to give the right conjugation based on whether or not it's an E to IE verb, root changing verb. Do I use a preposition with it? Which of the verbs do I use to make sure I have the right understanding of the verb and the context of the sentence? Those are the kinds of questions that you'll see on the quiz. Does anybody have any questions about reflexive verbs and how to use them and what they mean? Okay, good. Then your homework is online. Go ahead and start working on that. And if you have any questions, then please ask me. And I'll let you guys work on your homework together if you want to work on it together. Okay? All right.